Welcome to Verbal Pick Radio, where we give you a verbal image of life, and we are everyday people. Like to welcome y'all to the show. Look, family, I'm getting ready to go in, and I'm not going in because it's something that I want to do, and actually I do want to do it. But I'm saying I'm going in to answer some of these questions by some of these trolls. Some of them are racist. They, when they come on, they'll put in quotation marks snicker and a play on nigger, like we don't catch on to what they're trying to say, and they use this racist sarcasm in dealing with black people in general, and they think they're so cute and funny, but actually they're ignorant because they don't know the facts. Now, I stated earlier, someone was telling me about what happened to Mr. Hill, who was shot in Columbus, Ohio, in his garage by a white police officer, last name Coy, C-O-Y, right? And I was telling him, the foundation of the police department was started in racism, and when something has its beginning and it's been allowed to just move forward in time unchecked in its racism, then what's going to stop it? Meaning that racism in the police department have existed since the foundation of the police department, when it was called the Paddyrollers. And we know, black people, we used to use the term patty, dealing with white folks, or peppermint patty, and that was just a stem from the Paddyrollers, right? Who would come in and trace down runaway slaves, and even if they weren't runaway slaves, they still beat them, and because they had that authority at that time. And I don't know if it's factual, but this naivete by white people who saying that no, nothing like that could have existed. And I'm trying to say, wow, either you're naive or you're trying to change history. And I notice how we make a claim, right? And it doesn't matter what the claim is about. We can say, hey, we got proof that the Egyptians was black. We got proof that we started this genre in society, right? And then I'm noticing that they'll create a movie in 2020, right? But they'll have a 17th century backdrop to make it appear, like they're doing a reenactment of the 1700s. And then they completely change the whole narrative. That way, when when young people who have been who's not abreast in history, when they go back and watch these films, they'll think that it actually happened that way, and they're actually writing us out of history in the movie. So we got to be careful, and we have to put out the truth for our people and for the next generations, because actually it's up to us to put the truth out, right? So anyway, he was telling me to prove it, right? Prove the fact that the police department started with catching runaway slaves. So I sent him the proof, but I want to share the proof with you all. And this is by one of their scholars. His name is Ben Fontaine. He wrote this September 17th in 2018, right? My late sister's birthday. Slavery and the origins of the American police state. It says, from the beginning, some Americans have been able to move more freely than others. Now, and it's still that way today, but when we say white privilege, we have white people saying, oh, that's not true. I even had them say the black community need policing. And I'm like the white community don't. I done seen white people commit horrible acts, right? and still alive. Police talk to him. Look, Dylan Roof killed 9 in the church. They buy him a hamburger, didn't kill him. But when it comes to a black man, I mean, hell, brother had his cell phone in his hand. The other hand was empty. 10 seconds later, the police shot him. But okay, come on. Facts, right? You don't want to deal with reality. You want to deal with a narrative that was shoved in your mind, that was shoved in your brain, and you want to stick to that narrative. You don't even want to look outside of that narrative because it'll shake your foundation. Well, that's what we're here for. We're here to shake your foundation. They were called Paddyrollers, or variously Paddyrollers, or Paddyrollers, or Padderolls. Right, the different way they use the term of Paddyrollers was still the same Paddyrollers, right? And they were meant to be part of the solution to colonial America's biggest problem, labor. Unlike Great Britain, which had a large, basically immobile peasant class that could be forced to work for subsistence wages, meaning they were forced to work for basically peanuts, right? There weren't enough cheap bodies in America to do the grunt work. If you were a planter looking to make your fortune in rice or tobacco, the New World's cash crop, right? Because in the beginning, especially tobacco was the crop, man. They were, especially in Virginia. Okay, you had to size up to industrial scale, and for that you needed bodies. Armies of bodies, a labor force that could be made to work for terms no less brutal than those inflicted on the miserables of Europe. Who was the miserables of Europe that they sent to the Americas? The Queen emptied out her prisons and sent them to America to build up America for the Queen. Come on. The Native Americans weren't the solution. Not after disease, war, and murderous forms of forced labor reduced their numbers by half. Indentured servants were imported, but in numbers too few to fill the void. And they had a habit of running off. The wide frontier beckoned, all that empty space for sad mouths and malcontents to vanish into. So it became Africans. Jamestown received its first cargo of enslaved humans in 1619, but actually they came in 1555 on a slave ship called Jesus by John Hardy Hawkins. A dozen years after the colony's founding, 20 and odd Negroes, according to records, the first installment on the estimated 455,000 who would eventually land in North America. But some of these came from the Jamaica, the Caribbean islands. Only a third made it to the Americas. Control of this new labor force would be key. Mutiny was the great fear. By the early 1700s, a comprehensive system of racially directed law enforcement was well on its way to being fully developed. Certain people granted power can be counted on to abuse those under their authority just because they can, right? You grant a savage, an illiterate person power over another being, then they feel like, hey man, I can abuse you, I can do whatever I want to do to you because I can, I'm white, and who's going to stop me? That was their mindset, right? But when you talk about this, even to this day, white people quick to, no, wait, well, you can't say that, what black people did, they never want to, they never allow themselves to be backed in the corner and accept the truth. This was, in fact, the first systemic form of policing in the land that would become the United States. The Northeast colonies relied on the informal night watch system of volunteer policing and on private security to protect commercial property. Now, just like what happened with Trayvon Martin, volunteer policing. Still today, thought he had, like Zimmerman thought he had the right, by the authority given to him by the community, to murder this young black man, Trayvon Martin, right? Okay. So they were called the Night Watch, a system of volunteer policing and on private security to protect commercial property. In the southern colonies, policing origins were rooted in the slave economy and the radically racialized social order that invented whiteness as the ultimate boundary. Whites, no matter how poor or low, could not be held in slavery. Right? This is America. Blacks could be enslaved by anyone. Right? Now, they says whites, free blacks, and people of mixed race. Now, mixed race was Native American, indigenous blacks who, say, a black that came here through Africa, ran into the tribes, they married, had a child, they would call the child a mulatto. Right? Free blacks was the Moors, who was already here prior to them bringing the slaves from Africa, right? But after a while, the free blacks, the Moors, and the black natives that they called Native Americans started mixing in with each other. And the white boy, he couldn't tell the difference between who, so he just enslaved everybody. I can't tell one from another, so I'm calling y'all all Negroes, and everybody's going to be enslaved. So that was that took place in that system, right? The distinction and the economic order that created it was maintained by a legally sanctioned system of surveillance, intimidation, and brute force whose purpose was the control of blacks. Slave patrols, or Paddyrollers, were the chief enforcers of this system. Groups of armed, mounted whites who rode at night among the plantations and settlements of their assigned beats. The word originated with the patrols, seeking out runaway slaves, unsanctioned gatherings, right? Weapons, contraband, and generally any sign of potential revolt. They were the stuff of lore and songs, right? Here go the song. Run, nigga, run. Paddy roller will catch you. Run, nigga, run. I'll shoot you with my flintlock gun. Run, nigga, run. Paddy roller will catch you. Run, nigga, run. You better get away. The same today. Same today on the police force killing these unarmed black men. They still is acting out this song. Run, they want to kill you. I mean, it's sad because I'm pointing out the origin and how it's been carried out even until this day, and nothing has stopped it in its tracks. That's why when you hear them say defund the police, that's just a method that they feel will curve the killing or curve this system that's been in play since slavery. Defund it and start it all over from ground zero and build it back up and erase all of the erase that mindset in some of these racist police minds, get them off the force. Defund it might be a solution. We got to look into that because it's been passed down and carried on into 2020. It'll be sad if it goes on into 2021. Slave patrols usually consisted of 3 to 6 white men on horseback equipped with guns, rope, and whips. A mounted man presents an awesome figure, and the power and majesty of a group of men on horseback at night could terrify slaves into submission, writes Sally Hatton in her fine and useful book, Slave Patrols, Law and Violence in Virginia and the Carolinas. Among other duties, paddyrollers enforced the pass system, which required all slaves absent from their master's property to have a pass or a ticket. See, they still giving out tickets. You driving in your car, they pull you over and give you a ticket. You didn't even do nothing. But what they telling you is you're away from home. Let me see, where you going? You know, been pulled over here. A police officer asks you, so where you going? You know, it's none of your goddamn business where I'm going. Where the fuck you going? Excuse my French, but you asking a grown man where the hell he's going in a free country. And we put up with this shit. I'm sorry, I can't do it. Anyway, any slave encountered without a pass was subject to detention and beating on the spot. Now, here goes a sick man trying to beat another man. Although possession of a valid pass was by no means a guarantee against beating. Now, we dealing with a sick-minded individuals. Certain people granted power can be counted on to abuse those under their authority just because they can. One imagines, moreover, that gratuitous beatings relieve the tedium and fatigue of night-long patrols and serve to reinforce the notion of who was boss. The paddyrollers' authority extended to paddy-rolling plantation grounds and entering slave quarters where the presence of books, writing paper, weapons, liquor, luxury items, or more than the usual store of provisions was cause for beatings. Right? You know, just like they kept that system and they went all the way into the welfare system. You was caught with luxury items, so on and so. That was cause grounds for your welfare to be revoked, right? Gatherings, weddings, funerals, church services were grounds for beating. Wrights Hatton, mingling with whites, especially poor whites. See, again, right? Mingling with whites, especially poor whites, or any loose, disorderly, or suspected person with a beating. Right. Why was they so harsh on blacks meeting with poor whites? Because when they met with poor whites, they start to see that, hey, that whole image of white people being glorious and clean and, you know, that whole put them up on pedestals, they start to see, hey, wait a minute, this poor white is dumb, illiterate, and it ain't about shit. Wait a minute. So I can't say all whites, and it starts to erode at the false narrative that all whites descended from heaven, right? Just as pure. So they don't want you to meet with poor whites, right? Okay. Disorderly or suspected person caused a beating. Back talk, beatings. Dressing tittily with a beating. Singing certain hymns was a beating. Even best behavior could earn a lick. Elige, E-L-I-G-E, Davison, author, former Virginia slave, remembered that as bondsmen lay asleep in their own quarters, paddyrollers would enter and lightly hit them with a whip to see if they were truly tired and asleep at the end of the workday. Hatton writes, for an enslaved woman, a beating might well be the least of her worries. Sick-minded individuals in the sick system, but, you know, hey. The system continued largely intact after emancipation, still goes on today for the police department, and the defeat of the Confederacy. Legally sanctioned slave patrols were replaced by night-riding vigilantes like the Ku Klux Klan, whose white robes, flaming torches, and queer pseudo-ghost talk were intended for maximum terrorizing effect. Lynching and shooting took place alongside the more traditional punishments of beatings and whippings. Blacks' economic value as slaves had evaporated, and with it, the constraints on lethal force that had offered some measure of protection under the old system. And in the old system, they saw you as property. Don't kill your property. We need you in the field. But after slavery was over with, they said, man, no need. So, hey, we can kill them. White supremacy continued as the dominant reality for the next 100 years. And it goes on today. Well, I take that back. And it's dwindling down today. Matter of fact, it's damn near over. Man, it's over with. It used to. You're right. White supremacy is at its end, especially in 2021. A social and psychological reality maintained by terror, surveillance, and the letter of the law. Its power was such that even the New Deal, the most profound reordering of American society since the Civil War, left white supremacy intact. 26 lynchings were recorded in southern states in 1933. An anti-lynching bill was defeated in Congress in 1935, and they still trying to pass that anti-lynching bill today. Southern blacks' awareness of antebellum history was acute, naturally enough given that they were living it. Even 70 years after freedom came, Haddon writes, one former bondsman declared he still had his badge and pass to show the patrol so that no one could molest him. We don't have to know the particulars of history in order to live it in our bones. Sometimes history arrives as a sense of the uncanny, the peculiar weight of certain words and acts, a sufficient of dreadful power. We might suppose the past system is long gone, but there it is in stop and frisk and racial profiling in the reflexive fear and violence of our own time. Trayvon Martin, 17 years old, walking down the streets just minding his business, killed by self-anointed night riding or night watchman, so-called neighborhood watchman. Sandy Bland died in Texas. They talk about Walter Scott, Fernando Castillo, on and so forth many times. Fewer than 50 times. Okay, look, check this out. We'll start right here. Popular school cafeteria supervisor was Fernando Castillo, shot dead in Falcon Heights, Minnesota during a traffic stop for allegedly a broken tail light. Records revealed that he'd been pulled over no fewer than 52 times by local police in the preceding 14 years and owed over $6,000 in outstanding fines. That $6,000 in fines opens the window onto another ugly echo of times past, the use of law enforcement to extract profit from black and brown people. Michael Brown's death goes on. Then it says the American community in 2010, Ferguson's finance director informed the police chief that unless ticket writing ramps up significantly before the end of the year, it would be hard to significantly raise collections next year. Got a new traffic bill, but basically what it's saying, where slave patrols and passes, the Klan, Jim Crow, these are historical incarnations of a social order that held people of color to less than status, the necessary corollary to white supremacy. One doubts that Donald Trump knew the first thing about the past system and Paddyrollers when he took up the birther movement in 2011, employing lies and the cheapest sorts of innuendos to mainstream the allegations. The outright fantasy that Barack Obama was not a genuine U.S. citizen, Trump, the master plumber of the American psyche, intuited the heat into the allegation, its potential for exciting the country's ingrained racism. You couldn't very well send night riders in full conehead regalia to burn a cross on the White House lawn in hopes of running the Obamas out of town, but you could harass and attack by other means. Wage a 21st century version of vigilante warfare on behalf of white supremacy. Basically, what he's saying is this is 2020, and it's still going on because the system, once it was in place, and once it was forced, it's been going on, and it's been going on forward, marching through time, and it hasn't been stopped, right? And so it led to some responses that was, I'd say, brutal, but what they quote unquote call responsible whites didn't check the system. They went along to get along. So it forced some to fight back and say, you know what, enough is enough. We're not having this no more. I don't care. I'm willing to down the spot, but this stuff has got to change, right? So now it's at a point to where the universe is not allowing it to exist. It's tearing up the system as we speak. As going into 2021, I don't believe this universe will allow this racism and hate to continue. It's been around longer than there was anything called a Caucasian, and it will be around after the Caucasian has ceased on this planet in time, because even they're saying their population is dwindling. And this is not to be, I'm not saying anything that's racist or anything like that. I'm just repeating what the scientists say, that the white population is dwindling, right? And, you know, the problem is there's not any real sympathy to that fact because of the horrible history that was committed at the hands of the colonizers. So it is what it is. You know, sometimes people want you to show kindness and sympathy to their cause, but they got a long history of refusing you any sympathy and care when you were pleading for just simple rights, simple freedoms. You know, so I hope that answered those trolls who were trolling me on YouTube on the show and coming up with all these sayings and whatnot, and didn't want to agree or didn't want to adhere to the fact of what actually happened in history, wanted to ignore it and rewrite it. But thank God we have those who will keep repeating it and putting it in your face so you can deal with it right here on Verbal Pig Radio.